Good morning, everyone. In a previous lecture, we have discussed the levy of tax, that is, levy of GST, where we have seen the different tax rate which are applicable to the different commodities and to the services. Now, today we are going to discuss the taxable event. Exactly, the under which circumstances GST is what leviable. So that we will discuss now, and you will come to know exactly the uh, taxable event or when the GST is leviable. So the first condition is what there should be a supply. So what is the meaning of supply that we will learn in a definition. So supply means not only the sales but it includes exchange, barter, any type of licensing, franchising, or letting out the assets for uh, its use on a rental basis. So that everything comes under the definition of supply. So supply means not only sales, but whenever you transfers your property, goods, commodities, services to other person for the that will be treated as what supply. The supply must be of goods or services or both. That means the commodities which we have supplied or going to supply should fall in the definition of goods and services. So if it is not goods, say for example money, okay, or the services, then that will a pure love of parent and children will not be treated as services. Okay, so it should this transaction should fall under the definition of goods and services. So if the supply is of goods or services or both, then that is the second condition. So supply should be there, but the supply of what? Supply of goods and services or both. Then the next point is, so the supply should be made or agreed to be made in taxable territory. Now, what is the meaning of taxable territory? Taxable territory means whole of India. So it should happen in India. If anyone is supplying goods in Australia or in South Africa, then Indian government cannot charge GST on such supply. So it is outside of the taxable territory. The fourth condition is what the supply should be for a consideration. That means there should be a consideration. Now, which consideration? The valuable consideration. Okay, so whenever the goods supplied to the recipient should pay the consideration to the supplier. So if it is of free of cost, then that condition will not be satisfied. And then the last condition is supply should be in the course of or in furtherance of business. So whenever any supplier supplies the goods to the recipient, in his capacity he should supply as the business activity or any activity directly or indirectly related to his business or operational activity or under his professional capacity. So five conditions are there. There should be a supply. That supply should be of goods or services or both. Then the supply should made within a taxable territory and it should be for the valuable consideration, and that supply should take place in the course of or in furtherance of business. So if you are consuming that commodity for your personal use, then on which that will not come under the taxable event. So if these five conditions are satisfied, then GST will be levied. Now GST will not be levied if there is no supply or agreement of supply is cancelled. So if supply is not existed, that means if it doesn't come under the definition of supply, then and if any goods is transferred, say for example the father has gifted the property to son, then in such case the such transfer will not fall in the definition of supply, and in such case GST will not be levied. And if agreement of supply is cancelled, for example, if there was agreement between A and B that A will supply goods to B for so and so value on so and so date, but later on that agreement got cancelled, that agreement is cancelled. So in such case, GST will not be levied as the supply is not taken any place. If the supply is made outside of taxable territory, that means outside of India, then also GST will not be levied. If the supply is without consideration, that is free of cost, then GST will not be levied. But except these cases, Even in such cases, if it is without consideration, then also GST will be levied, such as permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, supply of goods or services or both between related person or between distinct person, supply of goods by principal to his agent or by an agent to his principal, and import of services. So in such cases, even it is free of cost, then also GST will be levied. Okay. So what is the meaning of disposal of business assets? So if, for example, there is a holding company and subsidiary company, and now there is a partition, and in such case, the assets will be transferred to the subsidiary company or from the subsidiary company to holding company. Then, in such case, if the consideration is not taken, then also GST will be levied on the total supply value. Similarly, if any consigner sends goods to the consignee, okay, and on which the consignee will pay only when he will sell that commodity in the local market. But even though the consignor sends goods to the agent, that is to the consignee, without any consideration, then also on the supply value, that means the consignment value, GST will be levied. And if GST will not come if it is not in the course of or furtherance of business, that means if it is not related to business, then GST will not come. Also, the GST is not leviable on specifically excluded goods and services. So, I will discuss with you what is the meaning of specifically excluded goods and services. Further, it is not applicable on zero rated supplies. Zero rated supplies means those goods which are exported. So, on export transaction, GST is not applicable. Now, the third point is supplies at nil rate, as we have discussed on vegetable, chicken, meat, egg, milk, okay, on which GST is not applicable, or wherever the tariff rate of any lodging and boarding is below 1000, then in such case GST will not be levied. Or if you are eating outside of, that means on a, not in restaurant but in small dhaba, if you are eating food, then in such case also GST will not be levied. आप अगर किसी गाड़ी पे जाके अगर वड़ा पाव खा रहे हो, तो उधर जीएसटी का सवाल नहीं आता, बट आप ऐसी रेस्टोरेंट में बैठ के खाना खा रहे हो, देन जीएसटी विल कम. सो सर्टन सप्लाईज आर ऑफ नील रेट, जैसे कि मिल्क है, एग है, चिकन है, मीट है, वेजिटेबल्स है, तो उनके ऊपर जीएसटी नील रेट है. Goods and services under negative list. Some certain goods and services are under negative list on which GST will not be applicable. For example, educational services. These are not liable for GST and exempt supplies. So on which GST is not leviable. So one by one we will discuss. Now specifically excluded goods and services means petroleum products such as crude oil, diesel, petrol, aviation turbine fuel and natural gas. तो इसके ऊपर अलग टैक्सेस है सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की, तो इसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं आता. अल्कोहलिक लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन. सो नॉर्मली द लिकर फॉर ह्यूमन कंजम्पशन जो विस्की बियर वगैरह रहते हैं उसके ऊपर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट एक्साइज ड्यूटी चार्ज करता है, तो उसके ऊपर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का कुछ इंटरफेयर नहीं है और वो भी GST के अंडर नहीं. एंड रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर आल्सो ऑन विच द स्टैम्प ड्यूटी इज चार्ज बाय द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. नाउ जीरो रेटेड सप्लाईज मींस एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. अगर आप कोई गुड्स और सर्विसेज आउटसाइड ऑफ कंट्री में सेल कर रहे हो, दैट मीन्स बाहर अगर आप उसको सेल कर रहे हो आउटसाइड ऑफ इंडिया, देन उसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं है. These goods, as we have discussed, having nil rate, sanitary napkins, okay, rakis without any precious metal, salt, मिल्क फ्रूट्स वेजिटेबल्स. तो ये सब जो चीजें हैं इसके बारे में ऑलरेडी हम लोगों ने लास्ट लेक्चर में देखा है, इन विच ऑन विच द जीएसटी रेट इज नील. नाउ these आर द गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज which falls under the negative list. फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आप किसी कंपनी में काम करते हो एज ए एम्प्लॉय एंड वॉट एवर सर्विसेज यू आर प्रोवाइडिंग टू एम्प्लॉयर फॉर विच एम्प्लॉयर इज पेइंग यू रेगुलर salary, so that services will not fall under the GST scope because they comes under the negative list. Similarly, if any funeral or burial or crematorium or mortuary services, so वो भी negative list में. Sale of land, sale of completed buildings, actionable claims such as lottery वगैरह, कोर्ट एडवोकेट की जो सर्विसेज है वो एमपी एमएलएस को जो भी कंसिडरेशन मिलता है फॉर वॉट एवर फंक्शंस दे आर परफॉर्मिंग, in the पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट, सो ये सब नेगेटिव लिस्ट के अंदर है. Then some supplies are exempt in nature. For example, agriculture products doesn't come under the GST scope. Live animals, अगर आप live animals का सेल करते हो तो एक्सेप्ट जो रेस के जो हॉर्स रहते हैं उनको छोड़ के, सो लाइव एनिमल्स, मीट, फिश, एग्स, करोड़ रुपए में आपका टर्नओवर है. अगर आप फिश या एग्स का या मीट का बिजनेस करते हो, डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स का, तो भी इसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं आएगा. डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स मीन्स नॉट द प्रोसेस. आपका एक डेयरी है जहाँ लोकल जो लोग रहते हैं जो एनिमल हस्बेंड्री से अ, काम करते हैं, आपको मिल्क वगैरह सप्लाई करते हैं, और उस मिल्क से अगर आप अ, दही, छाछ, वॉटेवर बना के बेचते हो, तो उसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं आता. ट्रीज, प्लांट, वेजिटेबल्स, कोकोनट, जैगरी, टी लीव्स, कॉफी बीन्स नॉट प्रोसेस्ड. हाँ, प्रोसेस्ड रहेगा तो 5% जीएसटी रहेगा. ओके, जिंजर, टर्मरिक, इसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं है. Then the services also, agriculture services, transportation services, judicial services, educational services, these are exempt in nature. मेडिकल सर्विसेज वगैरह जो, अगर आप रेंटिंग रेसिडेंशियल पर्पस के लिए रेंटिंग कर रहे हो तो जीएसटी नहीं आएगा. कमर्शियल पर्पस के लिए रेंटिंग कर रहे हो देन जीएसटी विल कम. देन सच these are the miscellaneous services. There's also exempt in nature, such as if you are using washrooms, lavatories, um, at airport, and for that if they are charging any specific amount, then that will be not taxable. Services provided by libraries, सर्विसेज प्रोवाइडेड फॉर कंडक्टिंग रिलीजियस सेरेमनी, जैसे कि आप किसी मंदिर में गए, उधर पैसा भरा पूजा करने के लिए, तो वो उसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं आएगा. देयर आर सर्टेन न्यू एग्जेम्पशंस, यू कैन रीड इट. Now we will go to the type of supply. Now the supply may be individual supply or bundle supply. Now what is the meaning of individual supply and bundle supply? When one commodity or one service is provided or supply, that is called individual supply. But when two or more than two goods or services are both jointly supplied, that is called bundle supply. Okay, so they are classified on the basis of their nature. One is composite supply and another one is a mixed supply. So, as we have discussed that the when first of all we will discuss about the composite supply. So, composite supply comes with a particular package. Say, for example, you are going outside of India for the vacation purpose. तो आपका एयरलाइंस का टिकट, होटल स्टे, गाइड का खर्चा, उधर का खाने पीने का खर्चा, everything comes together. आपका इंश्योरेंस, ट्रैवल इंश्योरेंस, so that jointly comes, that services comes together, so that is called the uh, yes, composite supply. Okay, composite supply. So in such case, जो प्राइम सर्विस जो रहती है या प्राइम जो सप्लाई है, उसके ऊपर का जो जीएसटी रेट है, दैट विल बी एप्लीकेबल ऑन द टोटल, और दैट इज ऑन composite supply. So for example, you have taken the um, event management services, but under that event management services, the food and catering services, video shooting and photography, fashion designing, mandap decoration, all services are coming. So इन सब में नॉर्मली द जीएसटी रेट इज 18%, बट अगर वेरिएशन है और बिल अगर एक ही साथ है, तो जो कोर सर्विसेज के ऊपर जो जीएसटी रेट है वो सब वैल्यू के ऊपर एप्लीकेबल हो जाएगा. बट इन द केस ऑफ द mixed supply, mixed supply means what? For example, there is a scheme which is introduced by a company for a Diwali festival, that buying of particular uh, what we can say particular gift pack, uh, it comes for rupees 999. Okay, so it consists some mithaiya, some the decorative items, of which the individual price may be more than 1000 rupees, say 1200, but as it comes together, it is offered for rupees 999. So there are, say for example, four items on which, on one item the GST rate is 5%. On another item, the GST rate is 12%. On the third item, the GST rate is 18%. And on the fourth item, the GST rate is 28%. But now, as they all comes together as a mixed supply, आपको पता नहीं चल रहा है कि हर एक का प्राइस क्या है. So in such case, what rate should be applied to compute the GST? So ऐसे केस में जो जिसके ऊपर GST रेट ज्यादा है, that will be treated as what the applicable rate in the case of mixed supply. तो अ, हम लोगों ने बंडल सप्लाई में देखा कॉम्पोजिट सप्लाई वेयर द विद द प्राइम सर्विसेज और प्राइम सप्लाई of goods or services or both, some other goods and services or both comes together. In such case, the prime supply का जो GST rate है that is applicable. But in the case of mixed supply, the GST rate which is more on the different commodities comes together in the mixed supply, that will be applicable for the total supply. So you can go through, you can read this format for difference between the mix and composite supply. Now we will learn the definitions, relevant definitions under GST, and then we will conclude our lecture. So students, under the GST, certain definitions we need to study. First of all, the address of delivery. So address of delivery refers to the address of the recipient of goods and or services indicated on the tax invoice. So on tax invoice, the address for delivery of goods mentioned by the recipient, that will be treated as address of delivery, and it will be helpful to find out the place of supply. So address of delivery is very important, and that is to be printed on tax invoice. So on that particular place, the goods will be delivered by the supplier. Aggregate turnover means, dear students, total turnover. The total turnover means if you are supplying different types of goods, or if you are supplying to the different customers, or if you are supplying different states, or if the sales may be taxable or tax free. So इन सब का जो total रहता है उसको बोला जाता है aggregate turnover. So if your different sales are there and उसका जो total रहता है, that will be treated as what aggregate turnover. Let us take example that your exempt supply is 15 lakhs and your taxable supply is 25 lakhs. Then your aggregate turnover is what 40 lakhs. Assessment under section 59 means, dear students, it is the process where the GST liability is ascertained. Okay, आपका GST liability कितना है वो उसको ढूंढने का जो प्रोसेस रहता है, दैट इज कॉल्ड असेसमेंट. दैट असेसमेंट मे बी अ सेल्फ असेसमेंट, रीअसेसमेंट, प्रोविजनल असेसमेंट, summary assessment, and best judgment assessment. Now self assessment means under the GST it is your duty to find out your own GST liability. If it is not possible for you, then you can take the help of practicing chartered accountant. वैसे रीअसेसमेंट, प्रोविजनल असेसमेंट्स रहते हैं. Provisional assessments means if you are finding difficulty to find out the GST rate which is applicable on particular commodity or on particular services, or if it is difficult for you to find out the value of GST, value of supply, then in such case you can take the help of the GST competent authority and you can ask them to help you to find out the value of value of supply. तो उस प्रोसेस को प्रोविजनल असेसमेंट बोला जाता है. नेक्स्ट इज business. Now business means any trade means buying and selling of goods. Commerce means any type of activity which is undertaken on the with the profit motive. Manufacture means value addition process where the raw material is converted into finished goods. Profession means when you are providing services uh, in your with the skill, knowledge, okay, and with your experience. These are called or treated as what profession. So when you are providing services under your professional capacity, that is called profession. Vocation, a sports person, artist will be treated as what vocation. So if you are doing any trade or commerce activity, commercial activity, or manufacturing activity, or professional activity, or if you are a artist or sports person, then that will fall your all that activity will fall under the definition of business. And any activity which is in directly or indirectly connected to such trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, or vocation will be also treated as what? The business. Now, the capital goods means the goods which is capitalized in the books and on which the person is claiming the credit and are intended to be used during the business. So, capital goods means those goods which are not consumed within 1 year and which are purchased by the company for the uh, long term use, such as plant, machinery, office furniture, office equipment, etc. Now, the another next definition is a casual taxable person. Now, who are casual taxable person? Casual taxable person, dear students, means those person who are not doing business on regular basis. वो कभी कभार आते हैं और अपना बिजनेस करते हैं, उनका कुछ पक्का ठिकाना नहीं रहता। जैसे कि जहाँ कहाँ भी ट्रेड फेयर भरता है वहाँ वो लोग जाके अपना गुड्स बेचते हैं, उनका कुछ ऐसा परमानेंट ऑफिस वगैरह नहीं रहता। सो देज आर कॉल्ड एज व्हाट? द कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन। Common portal. The common portal means is the GST portal where you can log in with your register ID and you can maintain your GST account and you can ascertain the GST liability. You can pay the GST liability. You can file return. That you, everything you can do through this common GST portal. As we have discussed now, the composite supply means when two or more than two goods or services are both supplied together, that is called as what? Composite supply. Next is a consideration. As we know that any payment made or to be made, whether in money or kind, or monetary value of any act or forbearance, whether or not voluntary, that will be treated as what? Consideration. तो अगर आप कुछ चीज के बदले में कुछ पैसा देते हो या पैसा देने का प्रॉमिस करते हो, तो दैट विल बी ट्रीटेड एज व्हाट? कंसिडरेशन. सो जो भी आप पेमेंट करते हो दैट मे बी इन कैश और इन काइंड. ओके. एंड द मॉनेटरी वैल्यू ऑफ एनी एक्ट ऑफ फॉरबियरेंस वेदर और नॉट वॉलेंटरी. सो अगर आप कोई चीज न करने के लिए भी कुछ कंसिडरेशन कुछ अगर पेमेंट कर रहे हो, सो दैट विल बी आल्सो ट्रीटेड एज व्हाट? कंसिडरेशन. क्रेडिट नोट. Now, this document is issued by the taxable person in relation to the tax invoice exceeding the taxable value or tax payable in respect of supply, whether goods supplied are returned by the recipient. सो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप सप्लायर हो और आपने कुछ गुड्स बेचा आपके कस्टमर को और उसने उसमें से कुछ गुड्स वापस किया, तो जितना गुड्स वापस किया उसका जितना भी वैल्यू रहेगा उसके लिए आपको उसको क्रेडिट नोट इश्यू करना पड़ेगा. फॉर एग्जांपल यू हैव सप्लाइड गुड्स टू मिस्टर अजय वर्थ ₹1 लाख, बट मिस्टर अजय इन टर्न रिटर्न यू 20,000 रुपीज गुड्स. तो 20,000 रुपीज गुड्स जो है उसके लिए मिस्टर अजय आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा? मिस्टर अजय को क्रेडिट नोट इश्यू करना पड़ेगा that you are crediting his account by rupees 20,000 because of the return of goods. On the other hand, debit note is the different part, as when you are returning goods to your supplier, that time you will issue debit note to him that that your company is debiting to the supplier account by so and so rupees. Electronic commerce means if you are doing any commercial activity through the electronic way through online, so that will be called as what? Electronic commerce. And those who are doing such activity are called as what? Electronic commerce operator. For example, Flipkart, Amazon, then your Zomato वगैरह, ये सब electronic commerce operator. Exempt supply means those supply which on which GST is not leviable. Fixed establishments means, dear students, this is your permanent office, say your head office or your corporate office or your business office, where the control and management of affairs take place. Now, GST is normally chargeable on forward charge. Forward charge means what? Supplier supply goods to the recipient, and recipient has to pay consideration to the supplier, and along with such consideration, they also need to pay GST. सो जब भी हम लोग गुड्स सप्लाई करते हैं रिसिपेंट को, तो रिसिपेंट को कंसिडरेशन तो देना ही है प्लस जीएसटी भी देना है. दैट इज कॉल्ड फॉरवर्ड चार्ज. Now goods means which refers to all type of movable property, okay, not immovable, movable property including actionable claim, growing crops, grass and things. So this all comes under the definition of goods. So अगर आप कोई जमीन बेचते हो तो जमीन गुड्स नहीं है, बट उस पे जो पेड़ पौधे हैं दैट कैन बी ट्रीटेड एज व्हाट गुड्स. फर्दर द एक्शनेबल क्लेम्स such as any type of certificates will be treated as what the um, goods or commodity. Harmonized system of nomenclature. This is the coding system which is generally used by the World Trade Organization, where each and every commodity is numbered with the 8-digit unique number. So it is, and that particular code will be read through the computer language. So uh, uh, it is very convenient for the identification of goods or services, as well as for its uh, for the GST computation purpose. So harmonized system of nomenclature gives the 8-digit unique number to each type of goods or commodities or services. So easily it can be identifiable by the GST system. Input service distributor means, dear students, normally the head office. हेड ऑफिस क्या करता है? बल्क में सेंट्रलाइज परचेस करता है और बाद में वो गुड्स ब्रांचेस को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करता है. और जैसे ब्रांचेस को गुड्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करता है तो उसके साथ जो जीएसटी क्रेडिट आता है वो भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करता है. तो उनको इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर बोला जाता है. इंपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स मीन्स व्हेन यू आर बाइंग गुड्स फ्रॉम आउटसाइड ऑफ इंडिया, or when you are buying goods from outside of state or outside of India, that will be treated as import of goods. So if you are registered in Maharashtra and if you are purchasing goods from Gujarat or from South Africa or from China, so that will be treated as what? Import of goods. The next point is input tax. The GST which you have paid on your purchases is called as what? Input tax. And when you are taking such input tax deduction for outward GST liability, that is called input tax credit. As we have discussed, intrastate supply means when Mr. Ajay of Mumbai supplies goods to Mr. Vijay of Pune, that will be called as what? Intrastate supply, because both are located in Maharashtra. But in similarly, when you are Mr. Ajay of Mumbai supplies services, say architecture services, to Mr. Vijay of Nashik, then that is also treated as what? Intrastate supply. Invoice is a document or called as tax invoice, which describes all the information regarding the supply of goods. So I will show you the invoice format in the next lecture. As we have discussed, inward supply means when you are purchasing any commodities for to supply that commodity as it is, or maybe by the value addition, so that is called inward supply. So inward supply means nothing but what? Purchase of goods or services or both. Job work means sometime we are not doing any manufacturing or value addition activity, but we outsource such activity, so that will be treated as what? Job work. तो आप आपके यहाँ फैक्ट आपका जो रॉ मटेरियल है उसको फिनिश गुड्स में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए टोटल 5 प्रोसेस है. 3 प्रोसेस आप अपने फैक्ट्री में लेते हो और 2 प्रोसेस आप क्या करते हो? आउटसोर्स करते हो. सो सच आउटसोर्स activity will be treated as what? Job work. Now we have discussed mixed supply means what, so I'm not going to explain once again. Mixed supply means two or more individual supply of goods made together by a taxable person for a single price, where such supply does not form a composite supply. So here the mixed supply means when different टाइप से स्वीट्स भी आ रहा है, फायर क्रैकर्स भी आ रहे हैं और कुछ पूजा सामग्री भी आ रही है एक साथ, और that is will be treated as what? For one single price, that will be called as what? Mixed supply. Non-resident taxable person means, dear students, uh, these are the taxable person who are supplied taxable goods in India, but that is but they are not resident in India. You know the residential status condition under section 6. If their staying period is less than 60 days or 182 days during the previous year, then they will be called non-resident. But if they are supplying taxable goods in India, then they will have to pay GST. Okay. So they are called as non-resident taxable person. Non-taxable supply means, dear students, which on which the GST is not leviable, such as the supply of goods or services which falls under the negative list. Output tax means the tax which is liable on your outward supply, that means on sales activity. So that is called outward supply. So supply, outward supply means sales, barter, exchange, okay, licensing और फ्रेंचाइजिंग और रेंटिंग, और उसके ऊपर जो जीएसटी आते हैं उसको बोला जाता है आउटपुट टैक्स. पर्सन मीन्स एनी इंडिविजुअल, आप, मैं, ओके, मिस्टर रमेश, डॉक्टर सुभाष, प्रोफेसर संगीता, एडवोकेट अजय, ओके, McNoble sir, they are called person, or even Hindu undivided family, or a company, Reliance, Tata Consultancy Services, a firm, okay, firm of, that is partnership firm or limited liability partnership, ओके, देन एसोसिएशन ऑफ पर्सन, कोई ट्रस्ट रहेगा, ओके, कोई एनजीओ रहेगा, तो कोई लोकल अथॉरिटी, ग्राम पंचायत, नगर पालिका, महानगर पालिका, कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी, ट्रस्ट, नैंदीप मंडल जैसे ट्रस्ट है हमारे कॉलेज का, सो दे ऑल fall under the definition of person. The next point is place of business. So place of business means where the business is ordinarily carried on. That may be a warehouse, that may be a godown, that may be your office. So from where you are doing your business activity, that place will be known as what? Business. Place of business. So that may be your godown or that may be your office. Recipient. Recipient means a buyer in short. Registered person means the person who is registered under the GST Act. Return means the documents and the details which you have to file with the GST authority uh, for where for the comply of the GST provisions. So when you are submitting all your details to the GST authority regarding your purchase, sales, GST payment, input tax credit, if any penalty or fines paid, so that will be known as what? Return. रिवर्स चार्ज. डियर स्टूडेंट्स, अगर आप गुड्स इंपोर्ट करते हो फॉरेन कंट्री से, तो आपको खुद जाके जीएसटी पे करना पड़ता है. नॉर्मली जीएसटी इज पेबल बाय द सप्लायर, बट सप्लायर कलेक्ट्स जीएसटी फ्रॉम द रिसिपेंट. But if you are importing goods from outside of India, then the supplier is located outside of India. He will or she will not pay GST on your behalf. So they will pay the GST to their government. They will not pay to the Indian government. So in such case, इंपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स में आपको खुद जाके जीएसटी पे करना पड़ता है. तो दैट विल बी नोन एज व्हाट? द रिवर्स चार्ज. सर्विसेज मींस एनीथिंग अदर देन गुड्स सच एज हॉस्पिटलिटी सर्विसेज, ओके, then architecture services, accounting or auditing services. Supplier means the person who supply goods or services or both to the recipient. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods, that is sale, transfer, barter, exchange, licensing, renting, leasing. Now the taxable person means those registered person who are liable to pay GST under the GST Act. Turnover in state means when you are doing any type of supply in a particular state, that will be called as what? Turnover in a state. So if you are registered in Maharashtra, if you are supplying goods worth rupees 50 lakhs, so that will be called as what? Turnover in state. Zero rated supply means, as I explained, all type of export supplies are known as what? Zero rated supply. So thank you. I will share these notes in the classroom. Thank you. Bye.